You are now tuned in to the Storm Tracker podcast.
Welcome back, family, to the Storm Tracker podcast. I'm Marcus Benjamin, representing for CanesCounty.com, part of the Rivals.com network. We are tracking the Hurricanes here on the YouTube channel, live from Canes County. Make sure you subscribe to that, as well as subscribe to this podcast on all platforms. Today, I have joining me Marshall Levenson from Rivals.com, national recruiting analyst, to talk a little Miami recruiting. How you doing today, Marshall?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, man. You and I, we've been kind of traveling a little bit. Saw you at the Rivals 5-star, saw a lot of talent out there. And then also you were able to go to the Future 50 as well.
Yeah.
So good stuff. We had, as in Miami, had two guys commit to Miami during the Rivals 5-star with Max Buchanan and Chris Ewald. Both of these guys, solid players. Max Buchanan, I think, probably had a better 5-star as far as what he did at the camp than Ewald. But from what you saw from these guys, what is Miami getting with Chris Ewald and Max Buchanan?
Yeah, I'll start with Buchanan first because I was able to watch him a little bit more. But a dog. I mean, when during the one-on-one reps and the big man challenge, there was a couple guys, both on the offensive line and the defensive line, that really got into it and got some. There was some nastiness to it, but in a good way. And Buchanan was definitely one of them. He wasn't letting anyone push him around, and if someone kind of got at him, he got right back in their face, and they went at it, had some good reps. So. To me, that was the biggest thing, was not just maybe the physical football talent, but the mentality as well. That stood out with Buchanan, but also, I mean, he had a really, really good camp, as you just alluded to. But I mean, I think they're getting a really good piece to, probably fit in the interior. But yeah, I mean, he was strong. The footwork was awesome. The hands were awesome. And he held his own. I mean, it was a really talented group of defensive linemen that they brought in there, including, a couple, elite 4-star and 5-star level guys. And, he held his own throughout the entire camp. So, I mean, we can see some of this here. I mean, this probably shows some of that mean streak right there. Yeah. Just flattening a guy. So, I mean, I was really impressed with what he showed. And, it was also really cool to see him commit there. Had a few different Miami guys and even some guys that are committed to other schools that were cheering during his commitment video that they were doing at the 5-star. So that was pretty cool to see. And then with Ewald, I didn't get to see much of him. I was with some other position groups that I was watching and evaluating. But, I mean, I love his length. That was the number one thing. When he's running around in warm-ups and everything, you're looking at his arms. That was apparent. So I didn't get to watch him one-on-ones. I have to go back and watch the video and everything whenever, when all it's cut up. But they're definitely getting an athlete, that's for sure. The length is something that you're always wanting in a corner, but he's one of the ones that when you're walking around and looking at him, you're like, oh yeah, nope, that's what it looks like right there. So it was good to see a lot of these guys in person. These were both guys I had never seen in person. Obviously, I'm in Texas, and these guys aren't guys that I see on a regular basis or anything. So it was fun to see these two, and Miami's definitely getting two really good pieces.
Yeah, what I like from Max Buchanan is just his technique. You can tell that he really puts a lot into his technique, and you saw that against elite competition. You saw that against Jahkeem Stewart, where he stoned him, and then he also stoned Jarquez Carter as well, and we'll get to him in a minute. So, I mean, in addition to that mean streak, he's just technically sound, and I think that's what Alex Mirabal and Mario Cristobal really like about him, and they'll really, have a player that they can really mold into a big time player once he gets over to the University of Miami. And I totally agree with you about Chris Ewald as well. I mean, I've been watching that kid, since he was, basically a freshman. This kid, he's just very technically sound as well. Kind of reminds me of Earl Little Jr., of a couple of cycles ago. Just really technical, very balanced, always gets his head around at the right moment to kind of deflect balls away. And he gets his hands on the ball to get interceptions as well. So really excited to see what Chris Ewald can do in the orange and green. And, the sky's the limit for him with his technical ability as well as his length as well. But there were some other guys at this 5-star that kind of stood out as well. Jarquez Carter and Hylton Stubbs. Those are two big Miami targets. A lot of buzz about Stubbs maybe committing to Miami this week. It looks like it's just down to 2 schools, Miami and Florida. I kind of thought he would maybe, wait until the Miami Florida game and really kind of make it dramatic to which team he would choose. But it seems like that decision may come as soon as this week. So your thoughts on Stubbs and what you saw from him at the 5-star?
I mean, he was awesome. Explosive as could be. I mean, as a safety, and even when he was out there was some talks about this might be the number 1 safety in the country. And I mean, you look at him, and John Garcia rivals obviously down your way in the Southeast. He was looking at him, and I think he even said like this is a 1998 free safety right here. Like just the that perfect build of what you're looking for from that position. And I mean, he's going to be a thumper. And I mean, he's built very, very well. And again, I didn't get to watch a ton of the defensive backs in the drills, but I got to watch them go through testing and got to watch them in, a little bit. And, some of these guys in the 7-on-7 portion. And I mean, wherever he ends up, they're getting a legit player that's going to have a chance to play early. Like I said, explosive athlete. In the vertical, and I know that the vertical doesn't mean everything, but it does give you a kind of a glimpse of what they are as their body type and their level of athleticism. But I think at one point he jumped like 38 inches, and then I think when they got to like the finals of that stuff, he was still jumping 34, 36 inches. So this is an awesome athlete. I mean, you see right there 97 tackles. Like, I mean, this is a guy that's going to be all over the field. Yeah, I mean, they're at the top of that safety position. I mean, he looked awesome, and no longer committed to USC, but Miami feels good about him, and I would agree about that. I mean, I think I think Miami's in a good spot with him as it looks like it's it's winding down. Those are the things you're gonna do. He's a vintage safety. Like he's gonna go get the ball for you, and he's gonna make a ton of tackles. He can crash down like that. I mean, just the explosion right there. That's all you want to see from him, and he backed that up at 5-star for sure.
Yeah, what I liked about him is his recovery speed. Like there was times where he was beat because obviously, I mean, you're going to get beat sometimes in these one-on-one situations when you're playing against elite, the best of the best. And there was times where he did get beat, and he's playing more of a one-on-one. He's not playing his more traditional safety position where he's kind of being a field general. Right. So there was times where he did get beat one-on-one, but he would recover, and that's what I really liked about him. He had that recovery speed to him and got his head around to get some deflections and just make it difficult for the receiver. And like you see from this video, he's also a thumper as well. So if Miami's able to land him, which I put in a forecast for him to land in Miami, I think Miami's really, really getting a good one here to solidify that safety position for the 2025 class. But what'd you think of Jarquez Carter? Big man, won the bench press competition, pushing 27 reps, but showed some quickness too in the one-on-ones. What'd you think of Jarquez Carter, and what do you think of Miami's chances of landing him?
Yeah, I mean, from a one-on-one reps standpoint, he was awesome. I mean, the bench press, that was just freaky. I mean, 27 reps at 225. I think it was like, I don't know, it would have been like 4th or 5th at the combine among, defensive linemen or defensive tackles, whatever the number was, a crazy number that to even think about. So he's obviously very, very strong, and that showed up pretty quick. But yeah, you're right. I mean, he is quick, and I mean, it was pretty apparent from the get-go that he was not there to, mess around. He was winning reps with ease. And I mean, he was probably one of my, he was probably my top 3 defensive linemen. all guys that, we all know it's, Jahkeem Stewart, Jarquez Carter, and Deuce Gerald's, of whatever order you want to put those guys. That was who I really enjoyed watching the most. He was awesome. And, coming from the interior, another guy, as far as Miami's chances, I know that Ohio State has had some buzz around him, coming out of 5-star, but it's certainly it's recruiting. He hasn't committed. There's really no, there's no timetable for what could happen with him. I would say probably Ohio State has a good reason to feel, it has some of that buzz coming out of 5-star, but this is a guy that Miami certainly can land. But yeah, as far as, his eval and coming out of that, his stock is sky high right now based off what he did, in Jacksonville.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely tune into CanesCounty.com for more on Jarquez Carter. I've got Marshall Levenson here with me from Rivals.com. Marshall, just kind of tell us what areas you cover for Rivals.
Yeah, so I've got the Mid-South, so that counts as Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Louisiana. But, I overlap a little bit. Obviously, we were down in Florida. We get to see everyone, and then I was at Future 50, so there's a bunch of national guys out there. So I get to see a little bit of everyone, but my primary spot is out here in the Mid-South, the Texas, Oklahoma, Louisiana region.
Very nice, very nice. Yeah, one of those guys that Miami's targeting for the 2026 class is Thanos, that they're calling him, right?
Yeah.
Jahkeem Stewart.
Oh yeah.
I tell you what, Marshall. When I saw him, this is my first time seeing him in person at the 5-star. I was blown away. I was blown away by this kid. He is intense as well. He's got relentless quickness, a variety of moves that he uses. Can overpower you and also run past you. And like I said, plays with an intensity. For a guy who's the number 1 recruit in the 2026 class, he probably didn't need to come to the Rivals 5-star or the Future 50. And the fact that he did, was really telling about him and his character. He is going to be visiting Miami in the summer. So what are your thoughts about Jahkeem Stewart from what you saw at the 2 events and Miami's chances of maybe landing him in the future?
Yeah, I've seen Jahkeem a bunch of times. These 2 events were probably, the 8th, 9th, 10th times I've seen him in the last, 8 months probably. And I love Jahkeem Stewart. But yeah, you're right. He really didn't have to come to these. If he didn't come to these, he probably would still be the number 1 prospect just from an evaluation standpoint. But that's his mindset. He wants to go face the best guys. And he's often asking people, where is so-and-so camping? What camp is this guy going to be at? Because he wants to face those offensive linemen, and he wants to show off, his skill set. And coming into this event, you're number 1. You have a lot to lose. If you go out there and you don't do great, it's like, okay, well, is this guy really number 1 then? Well, that didn't affect him at all. He went out there and he balled out, and you're right, he showed a number of different moves. A lot of times in camps, he'll use that straight arm and he'll just put guys right on their backside. But he eventually, he went to that straight arm a few times, but then he broke out a couple spin moves, broke out a couple, different different kind of secondary moves, and went to a couple different styles, moved inside, was outside. So yeah, he definitely backed up his ranking. But as far as Miami, yeah, he'll be there at the end of July for their event they're going to have. As far as their chances, you can't discount them. This is still an open recruitment. There's only really 5 or 6 schools that are in it. You got LSU, Ohio State, USC, Oregon, Texas, and Miami. And that's really about it. That's all you'll probably see from him as far as visits go. And he likes Miami. He talks very highly about them. And I don't necessarily know that there's one school that's in the lead. You could maybe argue, USC because he's been out there a couple times. But Miami's going to have a chance to impress. And this isn't going to be the last time he's there for sure. This is just going to be kind of a check-in visit for him, and he'll definitely be back in the future. So, they have as good a chance as any right now.
Yeah, absolutely. He'll be visiting with the MVP of the 5-star Deuce Gerald's, who
Yeah,
was absolutely outstanding as well. Really fun to watch. Three technique guy, very
yeah,
quick, strong. Apparently, him and Stewart are buddies, and they'll be both visiting Miami for their annual cookout on the 27th.
yeah,
Also, wanted to ask you about Jaboree Antoine, Marshall, because he's down there in Louisiana, just like Stewart.
yep.
So just kind of wanted to ask you about him. He decommitted recently from LSU, and Miami has been projected as one of the favorites here. So, what's your thoughts on him and his recruitment and Miami's chances there?
Yeah, I mean, when he backed off, I mean, one of the first things was like, all right, well, who's in it? And Miami was one of the two, and LSU's still in it. And I think that even though he backed off, I do think there is a chance he ends up back at LSU. But Miami, if it weren't LSU, I would probably give the nod to Miami right now. And he decommitted, so I mean that leaves things open. He said he's not necessarily going to rush into anything. He's going to take his time, but it was two Florida schools that were in it. And Miami was, you could argue at the top. So, um, yeah, I mean, he opened it up to see what is out there, and I really don't think it's going to go very much beyond the three schools that are in it. Um, and because he's in Louisiana, and because there's a couple guys that have been at LSU before that have maybe backed off their commitment and ended up back at LSU. There's some people that feel that may be the case down the line, but this is another player that he's played with a lot of the guys that are going to be connected to Miami and going to go to Miami because he was playing with SFE, for 7-on-7. So he knows a lot of these guys. He's been down there a few times. I think he visited in the spring, and then I think he was back this summer. So it wouldn't surprise me if he was another guy that ended up in Miami for the at the end of July for that event, for that recruiting event. And they're going to be they're going to continually be one of the top schools, in line with LSU, even though he, decommitted from the Tigers. They're still in the mix. So, yeah, I mean, just looking at some of this tape, I mean, the instincts are really good. I mean, he's tracking the hip. I mean, he's got really smooth feet. So, yeah, this is definitely one of the top players in the country in the 20, in this class. But yeah, it might be some time before we really get an idea of what's going to happen. But Miami's definitely in the thick of it.
So you think this will probably be stretched out a little bit longer, as far as what he decides?
Yeah, I don't necessarily know that we're going to see a decision in the next few weeks or anything like that. I think this will probably go into the season. Not necessarily a signing day decision. I mean, although it very well could be. But yeah, he said that he's not looking at anything imminent. I don't think we're going to see anything, in July. If it was before the season, it would probably be carried into maybe into August. So I think we're looking at least a couple of months before we see anything happen, because I think he's probably going to take some visits and kind of regroup things in his recruitment before he makes a decision here again.
Awesome. Yeah, Miami, like I said earlier, added Chris Ewald as a corner. They're still in the running for DJ Pickett as well, who
Yep.
wants to play corner as well. So if they could add a Jaboree Antoine, they're in the running for some other guys as well. This would be one hell of a class for the Miami Hurricanes. We'll
Absolutely.
get into like kind of where do you think they'll end up by the end of July here with so many targets? But I did want to kind of get your thoughts on a couple of targets, 2026 guys at the Future 50.
Yep.
Derrek Cooper, who was the MVP, every time he shows up, he shows out like every
Yeah.
time. I think this is definitely a coming out party for him as far as like this year's concerned and how talented this kid is. I mean, he's
Yeah.
been here in South Florida, and I think we knew about him, but we did. I don't think we knew the talent that he will become
Yeah.
from what we've seen him at the UA camp, the Rivals camp, and now at the Rivals 5-star, and also at the Future 50. Your thoughts on Derrek Cooper, and anything on the recruitment that you might know?
Yeah. I mean, I don't have a ton on his recruitment, but as a
Yeah.
player, I mean, what can he not play? I mean, at 5-star, it was, okay, is he going to play running back? Is he going to play linebacker? Is he going to play defensive back? Is he going to run some routes? Like, what is it going to be? And then, at Future 50, it was the same thing. We're going through positional drills. He was working at a running back, but then, in the modified 7-on-7, he was playing some wide receiver. And I think he was even, I think he was slotted at linebacker at one point. Like, I think he had a pass breakup or something, at defensive back. So one of the true athletes in the class. I mean, you have a couple guys that can play, wide receiver and corner, or, they maybe dabble in one or two positions that are outside of their primary. But this is one of the actual, true athletes in the class that is right now, he's positionless. And that's a good thing. That's not necessarily, some guys, you don't know where you're going to put them, and that's a bad thing. For him, it's because he's really, really good at all of it. So you don't know where he's going to fit. Body type wise, I would say he looks like a running back. If he keeps growing, I would say, I don't see him at corner, but skill set wise, he's probably got it. But body type, he's probably, a safety or, maybe a linebacker in the future. But or even, slot receiver is sometimes where those running backs will move out and play slot. So I would say that's where I would probably put him is, I like him on offense. I like, when a guy can make those types of plays, you want to get him the ball. So I would get the ball into his hands and let him do his thing. His recruitment's going to take, and he's going to be a popular man. And I think he's going to be a guy that there's not every school is going to recruit him for the same thing. And there might be some schools that recruit him just like, hey, we just want you on our roster. Like, we'll figure out what you're going to do later, but we just know that you can do something. So, like, we want you. Right. And so I'm not sure, what Miami is going to look at him as, but I know that there's going to be some, kind of some mixing and matching as far as different schools viewing him at different positions. But, certainly one of the true athletes that he'll probably finish as an athlete. I don't think he's going to have necessarily a true position that we assign him by even by the time that he signs with the school.
Yeah, he's an outstanding athlete for sure. From what I hear from him, and you can check my article out on canescounty.com. Miami's pretty open to him at running back. He's being recruited by the running backs coach, Matt Merritt. That's their main point of contact, but they're leaving it open to him to play safety as well. He's going to play both ways at Chaminade Madonna High School this season, which, is a tall task for any player. So especially with the elite competition that they'll be playing this season. So he said himself, he's going to really kind of fill it out and really see what he excels at. And that's what he'll go with. And I think if he doesn't grow too tall, I think he's pretty good at running back. But if he does grow, man, I think he's better off at like safety or wide receiver. Wide receiver is also an option for him at Miami as well.
Yeah, I think if he hits a growth spurt, I think safety would probably be, I'm going to go against what I just said a little bit. Like, the guy that can make those kinds of play with the ball in his hand, you want him with the ball in his hands. But if he grows a little bit, what he can do at safety might be really, really special. But he has a running back build right now. But even like I said, even like you said, just that slot receiver, he could be, really, really good, and he might be one of those types of guys that can play both sides in college. Not necessarily that he's going to, but he probably has the skill set too.
Definitely. One other player I want to talk about is Naeem Burroughs. This is a kid who was both at the 5-star event for us and also at the Future 50. This is a guy who has a really strong relationship with Miami. I just wrote the story this morning. Check that out on canescounty.com as well. Your thoughts on Naeem Burroughs and just the skill set you see from him?
Yeah, I didn't get a ton of kind of viewing time for him at 5-star, but I saw him a lot more at Future 50 than I did in Jacksonville. And he was making plays, which, I mean, you completely expect that of him. So he's another one of those guys. He's probably going to end up as one of the top wide receivers, in the country. And like you just said, has a great relationship with Miami. And, I wasn't the one that talked to him regarding his recruitment. It was one of our other guys that I'm sure is going to have an update on him here pretty soon. but yeah, I mean, he made plays, and it was a weird format of 7-on-7. It was a little bit of a 5-on-5 deal. It was kind of weird. So there wasn't a whole lot of room for these guys to run around, but he was creating separation, and in a condensed space, the fact that he was already creating separation is says something about his abilities to get open. Yeah, I mean, we see some of these videos right here. Yeah, I think he's going to be a contested catch guy too. He's not necessarily going to be a guy that needs to be open to catch balls. He's going to be able to go and make plays and get it himself. So yeah, I was definitely impressed with him at Future 50, and at that event, like I said, it was a bit of a weird style. So the guys that were getting open and making plays, it stood out a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. I really like what I saw from him. He can catch the ball in traffic and can get open. Only 2026, so he's only going to get better, bigger, stronger, faster. So like what Miami's doing there early with a guy like Burroughs, another in-state guy. Of course, they're looking at Jamie French as well. Hopefully for Hurricanes fans, Miami can land both of those Jacksonville products. But hey, this is going to be like one of the it's not necessarily the busiest month of the year for us, Marshall, but it's probably the besides signing day, it's probably the most busiest month.
Really,
December, I guess. Yeah, so Miami's in contention for a lot of guys. Like we talked about, we're expecting some more action this week. Gavin Nix last night. Herbert Scroggins was added to the commitment list as well. Jarquez Carter, July 18th is his date. And other players are just going to start popping out different dates, and they're just gonna decide where they want to go. Miami, from what I saw from last night, 13th in the country when it comes to recruiting. When it's all said and done at the end of just July, Marshall, do you think this team has a chance to jump into the top 10, top 5?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, top 10, I would say, I'm not going to promise they're going to drop in the top 10, but given the guys that they're in contention for, if they land some of those, I would have to assume they're in the top 10. Top 5 might be a little bit of a tall task, but again, if they hit a streak here and they land some of these guys, I don't know how many points it would take to jump in there from where they are now, but top 10 is certainly within grasp, and I would even say 7, 8, 9. For sure. I mean, a guy like Jarquez Carter himself would make a good jump in the points.
Sure. And
then I mean, if it were a guy that maybe a Jaboree Antione did pop early, or one of these guys that and maybe the thing that maybe takes it over the edge is like maybe a surprise commit, maybe one that's like, oh, that was they closed late on somebody. But absolutely, top 10 is within grasp, and I mean, you're talking about only moving up 3 spots, and a lot of those teams that are in that 10 to 15 range, they're pretty close to each other. So 1 or 2 commitments alone could help them bump up. But I would say I'm surprised if Miami's not in that 8, 9, 10 range. By the time the season starts.
Yeah, I think it's going to come down to, if Stubbs chooses Miami this week, that's going to be a big one. DJ Pickett, if he decides that, he is going to commit to the Hurricanes, that's going to be a huge one for Miami. Then, of course, Jarquez Carter. They're still in contention for Elijah Griffin, which I think he's probably going to play the long game. Probably won't happen this summer, but they're still in contention for him long term. And then you got guys like Bryce Fitzgerald, where they're still in the race for that. You never know, may decide to stay home. And wide receiver Jamie French, that I think Miami's in a pretty good spot with Jamie French. In my opinion, I think it's Miami or LSU or Texas. I think it's one of those 3 schools. But I think Miami made some really good progress on the last official visit with French. So I think if they add those guys and SJ Olafatulu, I think I said that name right. I think it's close enough. I think if they're able to land him, and I think Miami's in a good spot for him as well. I think Miami has a really good chance to get into that top 5 or close to that top 5 by the end of July, and then definitely by the end of December, which is, kudos to Mario Cristobal and this staff for what they're doing after having 2 average seasons.
Yeah, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but yeah, you're right. SJ, who's trending, who's trending to Miami, and then Hylton Stubbs. I would say trending for Miami. Those 2 alone, I would be very surprised if that did not get them into the top 10 from where they are right now. So, yeah, if you sprinkle in a couple of those other ones, yeah, I mean, top 5's within, I won't say it's within reach. It's not necessarily a guarantee by any means, but certainly doable, here in the next few weeks. And yeah, this month is going to be crazy. I mean, there's going to be commits every single day, the entire month. I mean, we've got a schedule built out, and it seems like there's 10 guys a day. And so some of that's going to change, and there's going to be some drama, I'm sure, and some big ones pop off the board we don't expect. But yeah, Miami's definitely going to be I assume one of these busy programs this month.
Absolutely. Marshall Levenson, once again, joining me from Rivals.com. Make sure you tune in and subscribe to Rivals.com, as well as CanesCounty.com for the latest on recruiting across the country, as well as with the Miami Hurricanes. Thanks again for joining me today, Marshall.
Absolutely. Thank you, man.
Appreciate it. Once again, make sure you subscribe to this podcast, the Storm Tracker Podcast, on all platforms, tracking the storm that is the Miami Hurricanes. Until the next episode.